Alright, so in this video we're going to go over how to measure using a digital caliper. So right over here, this is an example of a digital caliper. They all look pretty similar when you get one. And digital caliper is actually used for something called precision measuring. These are accurate to 1,000th of an inch. So another way to think about that is if I were to measure this piece of paper, let's say I wanted to know how thick this is, trying to do that with a ruler is just not going to happen. All right, I can measure it, and all I can tell is that this is less than a 1/16th of an inch. We actually can't measure it with a ruler. With a digital caliper, we could actually measure exactly how thick these two pieces of paper, when they're folded together, are, or the two ends of this piece of paper. So first thing you got to understand is how to actually use this thing. So we got some different buttons over here, right? So we have an on and off button. We have a 0 button, which we'll get into in a little bit. This button right over here allows us to measure or switch between inches and millimeters. And then we also have this thumb wheel right over here. These are the jaws. This is what we're going to use for external measurements. These are internal measurements, which you'll see in a little bit. And then over here, there's going to be a little stem that actually kind of pops out when I open up my jaws, and that's what we're going to use for something called depth measurements. So to open and close this, the important thing to understand is you always want to use the thumb wheel. So your thumb rests right on the wheel, and as you roll your thumb back, you can actually open and close the digital caliper. This is the only way that you should open and close this. We should never try to grab it from here, and we definitely shouldn't try to grab it from over here. All right, so that's the first thing. Second thing is whenever you want to make a measurement, let's say, for example, I want to measure the thickness of this ruler over here. I'm going to put that in between my jaws, and this would be an external measurement. What I'm going to do is kind of push this closed, and when my thumb wheel starts to slip, that's how I know I'm all the way closed. I don't want to try to force this anymore because, again, if I take and I mesh this up, let's say I bend these a little bit, my digital caliper is not going to measure correctly. So we always allow our digital caliper to slip, or the thumb wheel to slip, when we're opening and closing, or when we're closing something up. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we need to make sure that our digital caliper is actually zeroed out before we start using it. So I close this up all the way, and you can see that it's pretty close to 0. All right, but just in case, what we're going to do is this. So we're going to actually open this up. We're going to take a piece of paper, slide it right on the inside here, and then we're going to close it up like so. Again, my thumb wheel's slipping, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that piece of paper, and what that's going to do is that's going to clean up the inside of our jaws over here and make sure that there's no buildup or grime or anything else. So if I show you, for example, I put this real close, you can see there's a little bit that actually came off of the inside of the caliper there. So now once we know the inside's clean, what we want to do next is close it up. And you can even see now, notice how before it showed a little 5 there, a 1/2 of a 1,000th of an inch. Now it's actually right at 0. But either way, what we can do next, especially if we were off a little bit and it read something like this, I'm going to close this up all the way, press the 0 button, and that's going to zero out my digital caliper, just like so. So now we know we know what we're actually using this for, and we also know how to actually open and close this, which is important. Next thing we're going to do is go over 3 different measurements that you're actually going to use on this assignment. So the first one is an external measurement. So external measurements are just like what you would normally measure. If I told you, okay, I want you to measure how wide this cube is, you'd take your ruler and you would do this right over here. And this is an external measurement. This is somewhere around 3/4 of an inch. It's actually just a little bit bigger. To get a more precise measurement, what I can do is I can take my digital caliper, open it up, put the cube right inside of it like so, close it up, and I can kind of close it up until my thumb wheel slips, and you can see that I get a real precise measurement of 784 thousandths of an inch. So just a little bit bigger. If you think of 3/4, that would be 0.75. So this is 0.87 or 0.785, just a little bit bigger. So it's a lot more precise of a measurement. Again, if I want to do another external measurement, I can rotate it and I can measure this way as well. And you can see again 0.784. So anytime you do something like this, using this side of the jaw or this side of our digital caliper, you're doing external measurements. The next measurement is an internal measurement. So this is something really nice about digital calipers. It's something that's really hard to do with a ruler, but I can measure the inside of this hole, so I can find out the diameter, and I can also measure the inside of this cube as well, from the inside here to the inside there. That's something that's very tricky to do with a ruler. So to do an internal measurement, we're going to use this side right over here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take, and this kind of doesn't want to fit in there real well yet, so I'm going to actually open this up a little bit. And you can see as I open it up, you can see how those two little ends are kind of crisscrossing each other. So what I'll do now is I'll slide that right on the inside. You can see kind of what that looks like. And again, I'm just going to open this up until my thumb wheel slips. You can see that I get a measurement of 0.306, or 306 thousandths of an inch. If I want to measure, let's say the inside of this, for example, same thing. I can take and kind of put my digital caliper there, slide it inside, and I can start to open it up. Again, if I look real close, you can see how that is right on the inside there. I've let my thumb wheel slip, and I'm at 0.702. So it just gives you, some ways to measure the inside of the stuff. So I can measure the inside of this hole if I wanted to, and I can also measure the outside just by going back to this over here. So that would be internal measurements. And now the third measurement is something called a depth measurement. So if I take and I open up my digital caliper, you'll see that as I open it, this little rod or this little stem actually comes out the bottom. All right, and so as that comes out, so for example, right now, if I were to actually roll this open just a little bit more, I'm going to get this as close as I can to 0.75. All right, so 0.751. So right now, this stem is actually out 0.751 from this surface right over here. So it's 3/4 of an inch. If I go and measure this, it should measure basically right at 3/4, which you can see right there. All right, so this is what we can use to measure the depth of a hole. So if I want to measure the depth of this hole, for example, right on the inside of there, what I can do is I can take, and this is kind of hard for me to do on the video, it's easier if you just do it in person, but I'm going to start to open this up a little bit. I'm going to take that little stem, place it inside my hole, hold it in place, and then now I'm going to kind of roll my thumb wheel down. All right, so I'm kind of right on the inside there. You can see it's actually sticking out a little bit too far, so you got to be careful. So I'm just going to kind of close that back up a little bit. And inside, I've got 0.706. One thing to kind of note as you're using a digital caliper, it's good to take multiple measurements. You should get the same measurement each time. If you're doing the same measure or practicing the same one or trying the same measurement and you get a different reading each time, you're kind of messing up a little bit. So if I measure this again, I should get 0.706. All right, but that's how you do depth measurements. So again, just to kind of recap on what we're doing with this digital caliper, we know that it's for precise measurements. Right? If we want to zero this out, we always make sure we close it up all the way. Press the little 0 button. We use our thumb wheel to roll it back and forth, and we never force it closed. And then finally, to do external measurements, we use this. These jaws over here. To do internal, we use this side. And then to measure our depth, it is right over here. So that's a little bit on digital calipers. Try it for yourself, and hope that helps you out. Thanks for watching.